Hi and welcome to a new video on my channel. In today's video I want to show you how to begin Tunisian crochet projects, and by that I mean how to make 4 different foundation rows with different techniques. Some are more elastic than the others, but they all create a nice bottom edge to your Tunisian crochet projects. The first one that I want to show you is the most used in Tunisian crochet as far as I know, and it's very simple. You make as many chains as you have stitches, and then you pick up loops in the chains to make the foundation row. I will show you the method that I use, and there is a variation to this. We start with a slip knot on the hook, so we bring the tail to the front and over the working yarn, and we pick up the yarn through this loop to make a slip knot. We put it on the hook and pull to close up the slip knot on the hook without pulling too hard. We want the loop to be free. Then we chain as many times as we need to get the number of stitches that is required by the pattern. Let's say we need 10 stitches including the last stitch, so I will chain 10. Some people would chain 11 and skip one chain. We have 10 chains, but don't pull back on the working yarn. You want the chains to be loose. You don't want them to be super loose. You want them to have the structure of a chain, but you don't want to pull back on the working yarn and to close them, because then you will not be able to pick up the loops in the back bumps. As I mentioned, some people like to chain one more here and then start in the second chain from the hook. But I prefer working in the first chain from the hook because it makes the beginning of the row look the same for the foundation row as well as for the other rows. So all we have to do after we have the chain is to pick up stitches in the back bumps. To do that, we look at the chain and figure out which is the part with the back bumps. We insert the hook through the first back bump, yarn over, pick up a loop, leave it on the hook. Next chain, pick up a loop. Next chain, insert and pick up a loop, and so on. At the end, make sure you don't work into the slip knot, so the slip knot should not be worked into. If you don't like the way it looks, you can undo it after you finish your project and weave in the end. At the end of the row, I should have 11 loops on the hook, which means that there is one extra loop from the number of stitches that you're supposed to have in the pattern. That's the first stitch, and we usually don't work into it unless increasing at the beginning of the row, and we usually don't count it in the stitches. Some people count the first stitch as well. Just make sure you read the notes. Whenever you have a pattern from a new designer, make sure to see which stitches they count at the end of the row. For example, in my patterns, I put the number of loops at the end of the forward pass into the brackets at the end of the row. So when you count your loops on the hook like this, you know exactly how many you need to have. But in the pattern itself, I don't mention the first stitch. When you're finished picking up stitches on the hook, you chain 1. And then yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to do the return pass for the foundation row, until you have 1 loop left on the hook. And this is what it looks like when it's finished. Now you can continue working into the stitches as if you had made 1 row of simple stitches. So let's say we have a row of honeycomb stitch, so 1 Tunisian simple stitch and 1 purl. I do this usually at the beginning of any project to have a non-curling border on the project so that the rest of the fabric doesn't curl. When we reach the end of the row, we insert the hook behind the 2 vertical bars. Yarn over and pick up a loop. And then chain 1. Yarn over, pull through 2 to return. And this is how you work into this foundation. You will notice that you have these chain-like structures on the bottom, and these will finish off your project nicely. Or if you want to add an extra border when you're finished, you can also work into them like this, and they look pretty on their own as well. The second method I want to show you is inspired from regular crochet, where you have foundation single crochet stitches. But now, instead of finishing the single crochet stitches, we will keep them on the hook. So we begin again with a slip knot on the hook. And we chain 2. Then we insert the hook behind 2 of the loops of the first chain. We pick up a loop, and then we chain 2. Again, we insert the hook behind 2 loops of the first chain of these 2 that we just made. Pick up a loop, chain 2. We repeat this until we have enough loops on the hook, keeping in mind that we don't usually count the first loop as a stitch. So if you need 10 stitches, then you need to have 11 loops, including the last stitch. So I have 3 now, and then insert the hook into the first chain, pick up a loop, chain 2. Just make sure you insert behind the 2 bars here, not just one. Pick up a loop, chain 2, and we continue doing this until we have enough stitches on the hook. Now I have 11 loops. That means first stitch here, 9 stitches for a pattern, let's say, and the last stitch. And since we have already a tall stitch here, we don't do a chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2. We start with the yarn over, pull through 2 to return. Just be aware that these loops will be a bit tall because you have to pull on the hook when you make the chains. And now we have this foundation row, and we can work into the stitches. Let's say we make a honeycomb pattern. So if you want to choose this method, go down 2 hook sizes to the recommended hook size for your yarn, just for the foundation row. At the end of the row, you have this loop here. It's not the second chain, it's the first chain. So we insert the hook, pick up a loop, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning to return. As you can see, this casting on method creates these horizontal bumps on the front of the work, but on the side you have the same type of chains as with the other method with the chains. The bottom looks the same, and then you can work into it if you have to. The third method I want to show you is a long tail cast on, so you need to know how many stitches you will have in the beginning and then wrap the yarn around as many times as you will have stitches to see how long you need to leave the tail. Then we make a slip knot again and put it on the hook. And now we will use the tail to yarn over, and then we pick up a loop with the other yarn and we pull it through and then leave the loop on the hook. Again, we yarn over with the yarn and then we pick up a loop with the other yarn. We can continue doing this until we have the required number of loops on the hook. This is a very quick method of casting on, and it's also elastic and very easy to make. Just make sure you don't pull back on the long tail when you're finished with the loops, so leave the loop on the bottom about the same size as the height of the hook. You can get very fast at this if you want to. Let's say we have the required number of loops for the pattern, and make sure that you also have the last stitch. Then we chain 1 and then yarn over, pull through 2 and yarn over, pull through 2 and so on until the beginning of the row to do the return pass. This is a very neat method, and it's also elastic, so that's nice. Then you can work as usual into these loops, as if you had the foundation row made with chains. At the end of the row, always work behind the 2 vertical bars, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return and to finish the second row. Because this cast on is elastic, it will tend to scrunch up a bit. To use this, so this would be perfect to use, for example, for cuffs or the bottom and top of sweaters and other items where the stretchiness of the foundation row is a desirable trait. If we look at the loops that are formed on the bottom, we notice that they are in the other direction, but you can also work into them if you need to add a border later on. The last method I want to show you comes from knitting, where there are 2 ways to do the long tail cast on, and you also again need a long tail, enough to make the number of stitches that you need. To calculate this, it's best to start with 10 stitches, see how long the tail needs to be for the 10 stitches, and then multiply that by the amount of stitches you need and divide it by 10 to know exactly how much yarn you need to leave for the tail. I think the approximation by going like this around the hook also works. There are 2 stitches that you can make with the long tail cast on in knitting, and I will show you both of them because I generally use them when casting on for a simple rib, for example. We begin with just the loop on the hook, and then we twist it so it's locked in place. And we take the yarns and set them up. We will be working with the thumb to prepare the yarn for the cast on, and I will show you first one type of cast on and then the other, and then you alternate them. So let's try this one. You have the tail coming from the hook behind your thumb and going down into the hand. And the working yarn comes behind the pointing finger and then down into the hand. We take the hook, go behind the yarn here that goes into the hand, and then we pick up the working yarn and bring it through. And we let go of the thumb and we use it to pull back the yarn. And that makes 1 stitch. Again, we insert the thumb so that the yarn goes around it. We insert the hook through this loop, pick up the working yarn, put it on the hook, come back through the loop, and let it go. I hope you got the movement. Let's repeat it again. We go through, pick up the loop, let it go. Now the second setup is similar, but this time the yarn comes from behind the thumb and it goes back through the hand, and the working yarn is the same. And now we have a loop here. We go with the hook behind this tail and we pick up the main yarn and we go back through the loop. Then we let go and we pull on the tail. And that's it. Again, we go towards the palm here behind the tail, pick up the loop and come back through the loop on the thumb. If you look at the stitches, you will notice that they both have a way of leaning. The first ones I showed you lean towards this way, and the second ones I showed you lean towards the other direction. So when you work them together, one after the other, you will get a nice pair. So let's try it. First, the first one I showed you, going through, picking up a loop, and then the second one. As you can see, the first one I showed you created a pair with the second one I showed you. So now we created the second one, we create the first one, and we close the pair of stitches. I think these have some specific names, but I don't know them. I just make pairs of them, and that's it. When you're satisfied with the number of loops on your hook, including the first loop, don't forget about it, and the last stitch, we use the working yarn to chain 1. And then yarn over, pull through 2, and so on until the beginning of the row to return. This also creates an elastic, stretchy fabric here at the bottom. So you should also use this casting on method when you want to make cuffs or any other kind of stretchy band. And next row, you just work into the vertical bars as usual. I will just make simple stitches to show you the last stitch. With this kind of long tail cast on, it's a bit more difficult to go into the first row. So maybe you can increase the hook size when you do the cast on. At the end of the row, go behind the 2 vertical bars, pick up a loop, chain 1, yarn over pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return, and continue in pattern. You will notice that the first row will be a bit smaller and tighter here, and it has a tendency to curl because of the elasticity of the first row. And on the bottom, you don't have the 2 loops anymore. Maybe you do, but they're much narrower. These are the 4 methods for casting on in Tunisian crochet that I wanted to show you. And these create different types of foundation stitches that have advantages and disadvantages. For example, the first one, with working in the back bumps of the chains, you don't have any stretchiness in the bottom here. So the bottom of the work will not have the tendency to scrunch up on itself. The second one that I showed you with the foundation stitches has these horizontal bumps on the front, which you might like. For example, if you start with a few rows of reverse stitches, this works perfectly because then you have the similar pattern in the first few rows. This one is a special long tail cast on that's a bit elastic and works nice for edges. And this one is also a long tail cast on from knitting that you can make in 2 ways. And it also has some elasticity in the bottom. So these 2 work for edges like this, for sleeves and for neck bands and waistbands and such similar parts of your project. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to know when I publish more videos in this series and about Tunisian crochet in general, please subscribe to the channel because there are many other videos coming, both for beginners and for more advanced Tunisian crocheters. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye!